and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about the intersection of culture and commerce. I'm Brian.
And I'm Philip. And today we have, I think, one of the more important types of businesses that exist in the world, the most important cultural institution in the way that people connect over meals and experiences. Of course, we're talking about pizza.
Yeah.
What else would we be
Pizza
talking
Futures.
about? And today with us is the newly minted CMO over at Slice, Mr. Matthew Kobach. Welcome to Future Commerce for the first time.
Yeah, thank you. Really excited to be here. And you are absolutely correct on pizza being a cultural phenomenon. It brings people together, it brings community. It is like the one food that just like transcends class and community and people. It's amazing. I love it.
It is, and today we're gonna jump into a lot of it. We're gonna talk a little bit about your perspective, Matthew. I know that you've spent a lot of time on the technology side in businesses that power e-commerce. You've had quite a storied career. I'd love to hear a little bit about how those roles in your past inform your present and future. We're also going to talk a little bit about what the future might mean to Slice. But for those who aren't familiar, you've been in the role now for all of a month or so. What have you learned so far? And tell us, how you came into the position over there at Slice.
Yeah. So what I've learned is Slice is slightly different than in terms of a business that I understood before I joined. So this is what actually really got me excited to join. And I've learned more and more just like the first few weeks that I've been here. About the opportunity. A lot of people, myself included, thought it was a third-party delivery app, no different than Uber Eats or DoorDash, and it's not. It is quite different. So that was like the number one thing I've learned. But the problem is, if I thought it, our customers definitely think it, and we're a B2B to C company, so the shops think it. So what really got me excited was, okay, we've got a product that shops love, but they don't quite understand what we're doing. So one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in the first few months is really explaining what we do. It's a messaging issue. It's a value prop issue. And that's kind of what I started my career on. So it was really exciting to get into that, figure out all right, how do we succinctly describe what it is that we do? And so that's what really got me excited, other than the obvious. I'm a big fan of the founder. I'm a big fan of pizza. I'm a big fan of bringing community together. But the challenge ahead was something that I really wanted to tackle.
So what is the message? Tell our audience what that message is.
No, I love this. This is the right audience to understand this, because I can't actually use this with pizza shops, but I can use it with you all. We're more like HubSpot for pizza shops.
Okay.
We are actually like automated marketing. So what we do is we collect as much customer data as possible, and then we use that data to the advantage of the shop. Now, again, those third-party delivery apps collect the same data, but they use it to their advantage of themselves. They don't care that they're sending you back to the same spot that you ordered from. They just care that you're back in their ecosystem, ordering more often, bigger. We literally care that you are going back to your favorite shops. And so we're using this data to send push notifications, to send emails, to send texts when applicable. But then we're also using that data to help the shops understand, do I need to run a promo today to get more orders? Like, are Tuesdays a slow day? Is July 4th a slow day? What can I do to get more people to order digitally? Because when they order digitally, the orders are higher. So we're taking all this data that shops are either one, giving away to third-party apps, or two, they're not collecting already, and we're using it on their behalf all automatically. They don't have to do anything. We certainly sit there and help them understand the data if they want to, but if they're just I want to make food, I want to make pizza, and I want to make my customers feel loved, they can hand all of that off to us, and they never have to worry about it.
Wow. So it's on the consumer side, it's pizza discovery and pizza love, following through on that. But on the pizza shop owner side, it's actually a pizza insights engine and marketing engine.
Marketing, it's a marketing engine. That is our biggest value, and the main difference being the third-party delivery apps. They're really good at discovery. And you pay 30% for that discovery. And that's actually kind of fair for a new customer. If you're selling anything, like a 30% cut for a new customer, you're yeah, that's reasonable. But what you don't want to do is pay a 30% cut for, average loyal customers or really, really loyal customers. So that's where we come in. And we are good at helping with discovery, but we're really, really good at maximizing loyalty. And
Hmm.
so that's why we're actually able to charge shops less. And so then on the consumer side, we are very similar. We're a marketplace app. So the experience is very similar if you're ordering on a third-party delivery app. But we can charge less because we're able to get more orders for the shop at a lower cost than the third-party app. So it actually ends up being beneficial to the consumer as well.
So what I'm hearing is this is pizza commerce for a pizza world. And really what I think is going on right now is that Slice is going to be so good at what they do that eventually we're just going to self manifest, or Slice is going to manifest Snow Crash for us.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I was going to take it in a more practical
Okay, let's
direction.
do that.
Best thing that's ever happened is, of course, if you're listening to this, we are recording from from E-Tail Boston, and so, but I just had the greatest compliment that's ever been paid to us is that we are heady, pretentious, and unapproachable. So,
That's true.
which is actually like the greatest compliment that's ever been paid to us at Future Commerce. I do think that there's the maturity of commerce, the maturity of e-commerce in particular, is that we no longer have to rely on these tools that provide generalized solutions, right? So email marketing, MailChimp. Okay. MailChimp is for who? For everybody, right? And it doesn't matter. You could be a pizza shop, you could be a D2C e-commerce brand, you might be a house of worship or a local band. You use MailChimp. That's not the way that the world works anymore. It might have been that way 20 years ago. Today we have the digital transformation engine has allowed that industry can have its own solutions that are purpose built for them. How does your Matthew, coming back to you on this, how does your perspective of industries that you've worked in, because you've had a few not career changes, but you've hopped industries over the life of your career, you've seen a bunch of things. How does your perspective on this sort of idea of a bespoke or purpose built solution for one industry, how does that like impact the way that you're thinking about your prior experience, and how does that shape the way that you're going to lead the team at Slice?
Yeah. You end up, it's funny because I think you're exactly right. So, what you end up wanting is a lot of people who understand the industry that you're in, because the problems, like you said, the problems of a place of worship, or like the obstacles of a place of worship, be very different than a band, be very different than a restaurant. And certainly there's similarities, but what you want to do is build a team that is optimized for the industry that you're in. And that's currently what I'm doing right now. One of the you asked why, I think you asked why I joined Slice, or maybe I answered anyways if you didn't ask it. One of the interesting things is like the team isn't actually built. This is like a company that's been around for almost a decade, or maybe
Wow.
longer than a decade. I need to do my research, but they've been around for a little bit. And it was kind of coming into a bare cupboard here. So one of the things that I'm currently doing right now is filling that cupboard with people who understand the space, either from the consumer side or the pizza shop side. Because they understand the pain points. And this, again, kind of goes back to that first thing that we were talking about, where I think our messaging is off right now. They don't understand what we do. And to like really, really get good at messaging, you have to understand the customer. And like that's the part that I think transcends any industry. But you need that industry expertise if you're going to be messaging to them. And the reason I'm so like big on messaging, it's one of those things that like 10x's an ad. It's like
Yeah.
once you can succinctly explain what you do or what your value prop is, and it immediately sticks in someone's head, that's how you make an ad more impactful and how you make all your marketing more impactful. So hopefully that answered your question, but it's, I really like this idea of having industry relevant people talking to people in that same industry.
100%. Yeah. And I think, especially as we've seen, and we've talked about this on Future Commerce a lot, like context is becoming more and more difficult to address because the pace of change is so crazy. And technology is putting different contexts and mashing them up together, and we're seeing context collapse.
Consumer context.
Consumer context. Thank you. Yes.
Right.
And so it's really, really difficult to approach different consumers, let alone across industries. Even in industry, it's difficult to address them with like specific like or with broad market tools. And
Yeah.
so what I love, and I feel like you are like on the forefront of is, and I think we're to see a lot more of this, is these industry specific, like purpose built solutions,
Mm.
because context is hard all on its own, like that, even within industry.
Yeah. I'd love to like even take that a step further because you're touching upon something I'm like, it's in the back of my head. It's on the back burner and it's something I need to tackle in the upcoming months. Think about just ordering pizza. You think that's kind of a general thing. I need some brand awareness. Everyone orders pizza. But what's interesting is think about the like, kind of the average guy that just graduated college that is going to be ordering pizza a few nights a week because maybe he didn't learn how to cook or he's got like a new job and he's like too like busy to kind of do like the messaging to that consumer and the context needed to convince that consumer to use Slice is very different than a suburban parent who wants to like do weekly ordering. Like those messages are very different and the context that they're using the product are very different. And so you've got to, and like honestly, where you even like meet them, like obviously there's digital ads that you can target, but if you're going outside of digital, like where you put ththese ads matter and stuff. So it's really interesting to think about how context impacts what your message is, even if you're selling the same product. So uh,
Yes,
I like that you brought that up because it's something that I'm gonna have to tackle very soon.
I
My
love
that
that.
that's my I think my clear if I had to reference a pop culture reference, there's a scene in The Office where Michael Scott gets a new boss, and his new boss he discovers doesn't come from paper. What do you mean you don't come from the paper industry? I believe that even though it may not be so outspoken or something that's so in our face all of the time, I believe that sometimes the way that we sell to these incredibly diffuse industries, especially a lot of these companies that are adopting technology at this point, like Slice, are probably small chains, local restaurants. They have age of technology or none. They are looking at you as a leader to help their business grow, but they have to trust you that you understand the nature of their business. And for lack of a better word, like, do you come from paper? Like, you have to talk the talk. And so I guess my question to you would be, like, looking at what I know you for, which is one very small curated, one curated perspective of who Matthew Kobach is I know you through stellar social media. You
Mhm.
are a master of creating and managing conversations and getting attention online. How do you turn that prowess, or at least one perspective of who you are that I understand you to be? How does that inform the way that you build trust in not just Slice as a business technology company, but how others look at you, and how do you manage their perception of Slice as a brand?
Yeah. So I'll answer that two ways. One, you didn't quite ask this question, but I want to answer because I think it's relevant to what you said. Like, you don't come from paper, you don't come from pizza. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't work at pizza before, but I did work in a restaurant for several years. I was friends with the owner. I've got friends who've worked in the restaurant industry, so like I know how that works. I know that slog. I know how lonely it is. But more importantly, our founder did that. And
Mm.
like everything, like that's why a founder is so key. So like everything he does, it just like bleeds into the company and it becomes part of your DNA. And that's the case for every founder. Like who you are and what your experience is matters. Now, for me personally, what I think I've been able to do well on social media is really just um, get attention through really concise interesting hooks, social media. So like that is something that I personally believe in terms of marketing. And again, it's why I was so excited about messaging. I need to figure out what's that one hook that's going to get an owner or a customer to pay attention. And then what's the short little like pitch I can give them. And maybe, if it's a video, maybe it's 10 seconds. If it's a tweet, it's a sentence or two. But being able to like have that, I got your attention and I understand I have only got it for half of a moment, and like what is the key information you need to remember there. And so like that's what I try to like use, whether it's for a personal brand, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's a billboard. Like you've got to figure out that way to stand out, then deliver your message quickly. And that is true, in my opinion, across every industry. Now, certainly there are times like industry reports, thought leadership, where you have that freedom to go a little bit longer. But to me, it all starts with getting that first attention.
Can we actually let's dive into that a little bit because it's a great segue. A lot of technology companies use thought leadership as a way to credential themselves with their customers. So, one way to do this is we had to use in band example is, Nobel has a pizza futures report that I think people only looked at because it had sort of
It was
an
pretty.
aesthetic.
It was pretty.
It was a very modern looking report. Some of the criticism around the report is it'd be nice if they actually had a product to sell. Um, while they're talking about the future of pizza, maybe they should be making pizza. Um, I, how much does Slice either utilize thought leadership from others in the industry that are leaders, or how much do you generate, to your knowledge, to help to credential yourselves amongst other people in the industry, either your buyer or your partners?
Yeah. So they currently do this thing called Slice of the Union. It's once a year. It's at the beginning of the year. And I love it. I've seen it. It is like, what is the average cost of a pizza per state? What are the most popular toppings? What are the pizza trends of 2023? We were able, like, this is going to sound really stupid. We were able to predict that pizza on pickles was having, I'm sorry, pickles on pizza was having a moment. And so we were like 3 months ahead of the trend. And then when there's stories in food magazines about it, they're able to contact us because it was like we had it in writing before it ever took off.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I want to do is like, this is really interesting data. And what we can do is actually, one, use this for consumers because it's kind of fun and silly. Like we even have stuff like the most popular pizza names, like Sal's Pizza's #2 and Matt's Pizza. There's not a lot of Matt's making pizza apparently. So we're 418th, whatever the number is.
Hmm.
But there's all this stuff that's like fun for consumers, but then is actually really important for shops. And so what I want to do is take these like industry insights we have, and they're very regional too, and repackage these on a consistent basis to the shops. A good example is there's certain areas where ranch is a lot more popular than other areas. So it
Hmm.
means one or two things. It means one, maybe in the Midwest. I'm from the Midwest, by the way, so I get to say this about my people. We love ranch on pizza. I love ranch on pizza. I just had a pizza and I ordered like 13 ranches. There's a group of us. But maybe the data tells us people are already adding ranch for an extra dollar or two to their order. And what we can do is take this information and go, hey, all you shops in the South, our data says that people tend to like ranch, but you don't have it as an upsell option. So we can actually take the data that we have, the insights that we have, and help them increase their average volume order through industry expertise. And then we kind of know, we can look to, it's like, oh, cool, it's kind of actually trending. It looks like it's going across the nation, or it looks like it's kind of popped up here. So let's maybe in Phoenix, we let all these shops know, hey, this is something you need to add. Similar with toppings, similar with menu items. We might say, hey, our data again says people love to add mozzarella sticks to their pizza. I'm making it up. I don't know what this is, but like, that's the kind of insights and the kind of thought leadership that's like actually relevant to a shop that they can then use to increase their bottom line, because all they really care about is money. Like they are like
Right.
shop owners go, how can you make me more money? And
Restaurants are tough
yeah,
businesses.
unbelievably tough. So if we, and so then imagine this, we could say, hey, you know what? There's some really high margin menu items that shops in your area have that you don't have. You might want to consider adding whatever this item is because we know that they sell really well. And we know that you can mark it up 50% compared to some of the other stuff because that's what consumers are willing to pay. And so like there is this really interesting dynamic that we have all this data that is going to waste, like for like we send it to them once a year and it's really, kind of thin. Like I want to get into a place where we're giving shops all this data so they can maximize their order size and maximize their profits.
Oh my gosh! So this actually makes a ton of sense now. Your experience in North Beam seems like it would just play perfectly here because what you're really doing is this is a data play in many ways. You're helping them understand how to, when and how to raise their prices, when and how to add an item to their menu that is trending. And I'd love to hear more about like how psychographics can pop up in one area, and you all might have the data to be like, oh yeah, like experimental pizza people in a city that's 1,000 miles away might actually be the ones to try this thing that's popped up in this one region, because they're also experimental pizza triers. But yeah, tell me about a little bit about how like your experience at North Beam and analyzing data and having that sort of data background is helping you do this, and just for you personally.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I don't know that you could say it better. The thing that working at Northbeam taught me, the thing about ad buying that I learned, because I was not a well-versed ad buyer. I hadn't bought an ad, like a digital ad myself, since like I think 2014 or 15 or something when I joined Northbeam. So I knew enough to know that I didn't know anything. And then when I got like back in the weeds of it, I realized how much of an art it was. It sounds like it's a science, and there's certainly like scientific parts to it, but to know kind of what to look at, to know what to compare, to know that like, hey, this data is telling me one thing, but my gut is wrong. Let me dig deeper. Let me like figure out if I take this variable out or I add this variable in, if I still am getting the same thing. And I think that's very similar to what's going on when you use data in any capacity. Is it's really easy, and maybe this is my I've been burned before. I'm a little, you know, like it's easy for data to tell it whatever you to tell you whatever you want it to tell you.
That's
Mhm.
You
right.
know, you can kind of take something out, put something in. And it's like, look at the data proves what I thought. It's funny too because I come from a social media background, and I always used to laugh whenever anyone wanted like really really specific social media data, and it's like if you're not counting like downloads or some like or purchases or redirects or something like that, really all you can care about is impressions because everything else is kind of manipulatable. Like I can probably like here's our 5 best tweets, here's our 5 best Instagram posts. It's like what does that really tell us? And so you can just manipulate data so easily to tell the story that you want.
You can gerrymander data, you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. You can gerrymander data, and the people who are really, really good at looking at data are the ones who tell you there's no right or wrong way to look at data because they understand that anyone who says there's a right way, they have an agenda. And
There's
Mm.
that's how I feel about it, no matter the industry.
there's there's something that I have done in my career where I know what works and I have instincts around what works, and I have, formed opinions or hypotheses about what might work in the future, right? So, and you bring your whole self to work, right? How much of your prior experience, like you have created cultural moments that we have cited at prior companies, Fast with the hoodie. Northbeam, I think you guys kind of became known in the B2B space as trying to, yes, you have a great product, but you're also celebrating the business operators and their roles and sort of treating them to higher end experiences than others did in the space at that point. Like you've executed a playbook that is, I think, interesting and novel in a lot of different ways, and also has been critiqued a bit. And so I'd love to, get you to unpack what you've learned about that and what you might bring about those, that knowledge and experience into your role at Slice.
Yeah. Let's start with Fast. I think that's the one that feels most tangible, especially if people have been on Twitter and kind of saw hoodie giveaways and stuff. So first, let me tell you about the biggest lesson I learned there. When I joined Slice, I owned the well, actually, let me pause for or let me rewind for a second, just so people understand kind of the industry that it was and the industry that Slice is. We are a B2B to C marketplace. That's
Yeah.
what Fast was. That's what Slice is. So I need to get people to buy, like I need businesses to buy from us, and then I need consumers to buy from us. And my role at Fast was the consumer side. So I needed to get, and if you're unfamiliar with Fast, we were an online payment processor. We since went bankrupt, no money, sold for parts. But my job was to get the consumers excited to use Fast. I actually think we were quite successful with that. The problem was we were ahead of both the product and the B2B sales. So the most valuable lesson there I learned is your marketing. I don't want to say better because everyone's like, oh, your marketing was better. It wasn't better. It was ahead of where the company was. And so the biggest lesson I learned there is I can't drum up a bunch of excitement for something that isn't ready for prime time.
Hmm.
And like in my own defense, I was being told to do that. And it was like, no, it's going to be ready. We're going to do this. We're going to get it there. And it just took longer than you thought. And that's the case for every startup, really. Like you have a launch date and
That's
then
yeah.
maybe 6 months past that.
Vaporware.
And so the biggest lesson there was I actually needed to dedicate all my time to the B2B side to start. Because without that, I had like the reason the hoodie thing kind of took off is because we actually couldn't redirect them anywhere else to buy something that they were interested in. But it was really easy to get them to go through in order to the hoodie. Now, what made the hoodie so nice, other than the price, the word was kind of cool. Like wearing fast on your chest is kind of cool. Like there's something about that brand and that name that people that resonated with people and they wanted to wear it. I actually think Slice has something similar. So
Yeah,
I think I
sure.
can tap into that same thing. Like Slice is kind of a cool thing to wear. It's like it doesn't, it's not like North Beam is great, but it's a B2B SaaS company that isn't really necessarily a cool thing to say or to wear. And so what I want to do is like take the lessons I learned from Fast, which was focus on the B2B side first, get that up and running, then focus on the consumers, and then do some kind of fun giveaways and make people billboards and stuff. And that was the other reason it was kind of easy to justify too, is like you want walking billboards. And so if you can sell a hoodie at cost, great. If you sell it at less than cost, then so be it. You just can justify it as essentially out of home. And then one other thing to dispel with Fast, one of the reasons we also did this too, we were dog fooding our own product. So when we did some of these, like we needed massive order volume to make sure, like to find out what was breaking. So that means you need people in like different countries ordering with different currencies, ordering at different times, picking different size combinations and all this stuff. And so we were actually, I'm making up a number, but for $20,000, we actually got people really, really excited about our brand. And then we were able to identify, 50 bugs. And then we were able to knock all those out in 2 days, which had we not done that, probably would have taken months to find all
That's
those.
true.
So that was why. But like the excitement we got was real. I just wished I could have been like, here's a pair of Nike shoes I can sell you, and we were just never able to get there. And the real tragedy is we got there close. Like we had some really big brand names sign on like right before we shut down. So like our timing was just off. With that said, I actually think it's a bad business model and it's doomed to fail anyways, even if it had survived. And we had some competitors that are still alive. If you're from one of those, you know who you are. You're listening. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Dude, but I guess like without being too romantic about it, life is long. You get a lot of opportunities to right past, wrongs, or I mean, maybe not wrongs, but you get another at bat, right? And this is your next at bat. Uh, and I love that you're sort of setting the record straight in your own words in a bunch of ways, and I'm sure that you've done that on other shows as well. I think the e-commerce industry in particular likes to level a lot of critique about a right way to do things. Do you think that the same critique can exist towards the current business that you're in? Do you think that pizza shop owners and their customers have a perception about the right way to sell pizza to a customer online? And how might you address those concerns when they come up? And if they brush up against the types of things that you might do to drum up consumer awareness?
Yeah. I think this alludes to something that you said earlier in terms of like I've got a playbook, I've got an idea of what I think is going to work, and then it's kind of like now let's see if it actually works. It reminds me of that like Mike Tyson quote where he's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and so what I think it means in this context is like there are certain things that are going to work for a shop. Like there's certain like basically fundamental things that you have to do if you want to be successful, or that like 90% of successful shops do, and maybe 10% can get away with not doing it. And then there's that other 50% that is shop dependent. It's culturally dependent. Like the way that people order and eat pizza in New York is very different than in Atlanta, Georgia, like which is where I'm in right now, which is very different than Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which
Sure.
is where I'm from. And so you can't have this playbook. And again, I think this applies to D2C brands. It applies to anything that you're selling. It applies to B2B SaaS. If you come in saying this is exactly how to sell this, this is the playbook, we don't need to change a thing, it's going to fail because like every business is different, every customer is different, and we even see it in Slice. So like we're literally before I'm doing this interview, I was in a Slack message talking about the different cohorts of shops that we have and how we're going to strategically go after them. We have an email sequence I'm writing right now, and I have 6 different shop cohorts just for current customers. Doesn't even include prospects. And so like we're giving each one of them a different message because there is no one way to convert all of these different shops that we want to have a more, robust relationship with them. And there's not one way that we can do it with all these different cohorts that we have. And so I very strongly believe that like, yes, There's foundational things you need to do in order to be successful. And then 50% of it, you've got to like use your instinct or your gut or realize that like, your past experience, even if it's not one-to-one, on how you're going to market this either specific product or to this specific cohort.
This is really interesting. Yeah, it seems like I mean, the great thing about the business you're in is that it's a business that everyone loves. Like literally everybody loves pizza. There's no one like I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions out
Aren't
there,
you gluten intolerant?
but I still love pizza. I love
We have gluten-free. There's gluten-free pizza shops.
Yeah,
That's right. No, and there's some phenomenal ones in New York. So it's an interesting industry in that like demand is there. And actually Slice has an incredible name already. Like you've got a pretty
yeah.
rabid fan base out there. Like merch, no brainer. Like you said, Slice, great idea for like just throwing on a shirt. I'm in. Like it's cool. But so as you look at Slice as a business and kind of where you're headed, it seems like it's got a lot of like legs. Like you're on a bit of a rocket ship right now. What as you approach the role, we've talked about some of your experience at Fast. We've talked about Northbeam a little bit. What are the things that you're going to do to help accelerate that even faster, and to go faster and grow maybe even at a rate that it wouldn't have organically grown just given the industry you're in?
Matt, let me just pop in there. I
Yeah.
would almost say like if this company is going to grow despite all the odds because it's a killer category and everybody loves pizza, how do you prove that your hire is the thing that was the rocket fuel?
Yeah, it's a great question.
So one, I don't know that I need to. And if my boss is listening, plug your ears right now. I purposefully want to join companies where, and this was a lesson I learned, that have wind at their sails, that have a lot of momentum. I want to add gasoline to an already burning fire. And I think there's times in your career where you can start from scratch and do that. And I realized like that's what I did at Fast. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't do it at Northbeam. We already had some of that. So I want to go to a place where it's like, man, everything's going well and marketing's humming. And like, I think it was marketing, but maybe it wasn't marketing. And we can get into attribution and I can do like mixed media modeling and all that to figure all that stuff out. But I do want a place where if all of a sudden the numbers start dramatically going up, that it coincides with when I joined. And I think that's kind of an easy enough data point to look at to think this is working well enough. We're not going to do anything. And so yeah, it's like it is very purposeful that I joined this company. Now, with that said, I don't think that it is a foregone conclusion that we will be a household name. If you are in the Northeast and you walk outside, like you all are in Boston right now, if you walk out in Boston, I bet 5 out of 10 people would probably say, yeah, I've heard of Slice. If I go outside New York, maybe it's like 7 or 8 out of 10 out of people have heard of Slice. If I go outside right now in Atlanta, I'm willing to bet I'd be lucky if one person had heard of Slice.
Yeah.
And so how I see my job is like, we have, they've done nationwide stuff and it just hasn't caught on the same way that it did in the Northeast. So I see my job as figuring out, okay, it turns out we probably have more of a local business than we realize. And I think this goes back to, again, this cohort, this playbooks. I need to figure out how to sell Slice to pizza shops in the Southeast, because it's probably going to be slightly different than how I sell it to shops in the Midwest and to shops in Texas, which is its own thing, and shops on the East or West Coast. And so what I've got to do is I've actually got to, again, go to that idea of playbooks that we're talking about. I got to figure out what are the fundamental ways to launch Slice in a city or in a geographical area. And then what are the things I need to change when I go from a Wisconsin shop to an Arizona shop? And that's what gets me really excited. And that's how I can, I think, prove my worth. Because if we go, all right, we're very deliberately going to expand to Atlanta. And it's going to be a team effort because it has to be sales and it has to be go to market and it has to be, honestly, our current customer success because we rely on referrals and all that stuff. But if I can be a part of that, it's almost like I don't care if I get credit for it or not. I think anyone in the company would be foolish to say, hey, this worked, let's mess with it, or let's not give marketing credit. I just don't see that as an issue, but that's something about it. I really don't think that we are destined, but I think we have product market fit. And that's what really excites me is like, I've got to take a product that I know shops love and I've got to get them in other geographical areas to understand why it's so great.
It's interesting. One last thing there on that is I love that you've identified that like you kind of are a local business. Do you think that there's some limiting factors, especially because I think actually the West Coast is it's a really weird place when it comes to pizza. There's actually a lot more chain activity than you might expect. And I think about my town, we have like 4 or 5 pizza shops, and only one of them is like it's a local chain of like 10 pizza shops. Do you think you're going to have any trouble in like in geographies and regions where
There's not a
think
diversity.
there's less diversity
Right,
of
right.
pizza, and also there's more driving involved in those communities, like things are more spread out. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting
No,
thought.
I absolutely think that. So I completely agree that it is different per region. And right now, we're learning that what worked in New York doesn't necessarily work on the West Coast. So we're building that muscle to be able to sell there and to be able to build that habit. And what that honestly might mean is there are places that are absolutely pizza shops, and there are places that are absolutely not pizza shops. And
Hmm.
then there's a bunch of shops in the middle. And so
Hmm.
what we've got to figure out is like we need to get, and the shops in the middle are already on Slice. A good example is my local Chinese place here in Atlanta is on Slice. And the reason is because they added pizza to the menu during COVID because they realized a lot of
Hmm.
people just want to take out pizza, and they've kept it. It's been a success. And so what we've got to figure out is like how do we get, it's almost like we have pizza, but we need to branch out a little bit beyond just pizza, because even your favorite pizza shop probably sells really good wings or probably sells a really good sandwich. And again, it depends. This is where the local thing is really interesting.
Hmm.
In Philadelphia, you probably have a lot of pizza places that also sell cheesesteaks.
It's
In
true.
Boston, I think it's roast beef sandwiches.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, it's gonna sound weird. It's like fish. Like you have fish fries every day. And so it's figuring out like, all right, how do we get those shops that are in the middle? Because all of a sudden, then the
Yeah.
amount of restaurants that you can order from become a lot larger. And so like that's how we've got to think about expansion in the areas where it's not as, you think of a stereotypical New York pizza shop.
Hmm. Everything is pizza. That's what I
Everything is
Yeah,
you
if
know
you
when your
try
local Chinese
pizza,
shop is
Pizza's
making pizza.
life.
it's been really cool to actually finally meet you, to have you on the show. I really appreciate that you've put all of this in the context that I think our audience could really grab something on, and sort of like give them a better perspective of how they see their business or the challenge in their business. We usually wrap by asking, what is the future of commerce? I think we all have established that the future of commerce is pizza. But I think that there's probably something here that you could talk a little bit about, which is, you know, yeah, this nature of the digital consumer and reaching them in their region and in their context where they are, and not really just taking something for granted as you kind of put it out into the world and then people adopt it. You kind of have to adapt it to market. So maybe wax poetic a bit on that, and then tell us where we can find you online.
So I agree with you. I'm going to even answer like I think the future of commerce, we look at it from a consumer standpoint all too often.
Hmm.
And so I want to look at it from a business point of view. And if you look at like like D2C is very, digital first. And like you can kind of see it like it's almost like we've hit like penetration, or at least in terms of like growth, like year over year growth. Like, take the pandemic out of it, it's going to kind of look, obviously people aren't watching me, but I'm going up and to the right. And that's kind of how it is. But there are so many industries that have not adopted this, like, I don't even want to say digital first, but like digital option way of doing commerce. And I think the shops that do that the quickest are going to be the most successful. And it's not even necessarily because people are demanding to order digitally. I think some of them are. I think a lot of people go to a website, they want to order, they can't. I know a lot of like Gen Z hate calling someone on the phone and they just want to order. But really, to me, it's more about owning the data. It's this idea that you have all this data and you are throwing it away. And so, to me, the future of commerce is shops that have not yet harnessed the power of data to do something really special with it and to figure out how to maximize the value of their customers. To
Hmm.
me, that's where this is going. And what you're going to see is a lot of like shops over the next 10, 15 years are going to have turnover of the parent or grandparent who owned it, and you're going to have a grandson or child inherit it, and they're going to realize I've got to figure out how to make this work in 2025, and how I make that work in 2025 is very different than how it was working in 1985. And so those people are going to be the ones that are going to have a very clear advantage over the shops that have not adopted
Hmm.
the power of data.
That's a phenomenal last word. Thank you so much. Matthew Kobach, where do we get your thoughts and insight? Follow your new journey.
Let's just do Twitter. It's just
Great.
M Kobach on Twitter. That's where I'm on Instagram too, but I just post my kid there and no one cares about that.
Same.
So Twitter, find me on
Very,
Twitter.
very cool. We'll link it up in the show notes. Congrats on the new role.
Yeah.
Best of luck, and wish you all the success in the world. And hey, I'm gonna go install Slice. Very cool.
I should give a thing for Slice. DM me and I'll give you a code for free pizza.
Okay. Well, hey, we'll tease that. I'll add it.
Yeah, DM me if you're listening to this and find me. DM me. I'll send you a code for free pizza.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.